Um, I will be the one then. On Friday, we saw some interesting developments within the Legislative Assembly. There's a lot of questions surrounding the stability. I don't know if stability is quite the right word there, but what is happening within government? So I put it to you right now. What is the strength of the government right now after watching two government people vote against party lines, the speaker having to step in and break a tie, something you don't normally see happen? I leave it to you.
Well, I'll be the first to say, Friday was not the government's finest hour. But what transpired on Friday had nothing to do with the stability of the government. I think it is a clear indication of how controversial this whole issue of electoral reform actually is. And I should go on record and say that we have worked very hard at this issue for many months. We held a 2-day retreat. And I came away from it, and I think most people came away from it believing we had reached a compromise which all members of the government team, all 13, including the speaker, could actually back. As I've said before, I don't lead a progressive administration. I lead an administration in which the progressives have the majority. But there are 13 members of the team. I could not form a government with just the 9 that were elected. And so while those who have strong views about this issue will say that the progressives have wavered from their manifesto promise, et cetera, I've been around long enough to know that I have to keep a government together. I have been in office not quite 14 years, and I've seen the demise of 2 governments during their term. I've been part of one of those, and I moved the no confidence motion with respect to the second one. So I am very, very conscious of how easy it is for a government to fall apart because people take dogmatic views about something. So I have striven from the very start to reach consensus on issues, on all issues. It's not always possible, but I try, and I try really hard. It is one thing if I have one member who says they don't agree, or 2 members that say they don't agree. But when I start to get serious disagreement on fundamental issues from significant number of members of my team, I have to take that into account. So we went to the Legislative Assembly, not only after having had a 2-day retreat, but also after caucus on Monday, before the House met on Wednesday. I certainly was of the view that all members of the team were still supporting the position that we'd taken, which is that we supported single-member constituencies, but that we wish to adopt a system similar to that which has been adopted in the Turks and Caicos Islands and in the British Virgin Islands, where you have the majority of seats as single-member constituency seats, and then you have a number of at-large constituencies. And so it was a surprise, really, for me when members of my team, some members of my team, felt that they had to support the single-member constituency motion, which had been brought by the members from East End and North Side. So that is a surprise. The other bit, though, which I think has caused people to think that there may be some difference of view in cabinet, is actually really a function of a few things. Some political naivety and some of my team being rookies in that respect, not understanding how this game is played, and really the actions of a wily old campaigner like Arden McLean, who looked up and saw that 4 of the seats at the government front bench were empty and sat down in the middle of what he was saying so that we were caught literally.
And the vote will be taken.
Short. And so this was a combination of things. But the result was not a consequence of any instability in the government. As I said, clearly we have issues about this whole the whole single member constituency point. And of course, I've been the whipping boy, but most of my career I've been the whipping boy, so I'm not unused to that for this. But I needed to make it very plain that if my team wants pure single member constituencies, then it'll be pure single member constituencies. I certainly would not have stood up in the House and put forward the government's position had I been of the view that this was not the position of the team. And it is still the position of the vast majority of the team. The concerns about the size of constituencies is real. It is so real that they dealt with it this way in the Turks and Caicos Islands. They dealt with it this way in the British Virgin Islands. Because if you wind up with constituencies that are so small that persons can get elected on the basis of 250 or 300 votes, it becomes very easy to wrongly influence the outcome of an election. There are a few things that I can claim to be an expert on or to really know, but I can tell you this much. I understand Georgetown politics. I have spent 6 campaigns in Georgetown politics. 2 as a stalwart supporter and committee member for my good friend on the right, Minister Tibbetts, and the other 4 in which I have been intimately involved. I know every nook and cranny, every road, every street in the district of Georgetown. There is no part of it I have not been, and I don't know the people. And I can tell you, hand on heart, that if we divide Georgetown into such small constituencies where it is possible to be elected on the basis of 250 or 300 votes, we are going to have some bizarre results. Areas which are vulnerable because of their social economic makeup are really, really worrying. And so let's do the numbers. There were 18,600 roughly voters in the last election. If we make a special case for East End, which is what we're being asked to do, and a special case for Northside, which we're being asked to do, and a special case for Cayman Bracken and Little Cayman, which we're being asked to do, to honor their historical district boundaries and cultural differences. When I say make differences, I'm talking about in terms of numbers, so that their numbers are significantly below what the average would be. We wind up then with about 16,000 voters left. You divide that then by, if we stick to 18 seats, you divide that then by 15. Or if you go to 19, you divide it by 16. And look at the numbers of voters that you have in each constituency. And then you bear in mind that the 2 dominant parties are bound to field candidates. And there are likely to be a number of independents who run. And you will understand very quickly, with constituencies of around 800 or 900 persons, how someone can get elected on the basis of 250 or 300 votes. The reason why they went to a combination in the Turks and Caicos Islands, where they are, and I went and got this because I knew you were going to ask me this question. There are 10 single-member constituencies and 5 at-large constituencies in a population of less than 48,000 people. I don't know how many registered voters they have because I haven't drilled down that far. And the reason why they did that in the British Virgin Islands, where there are 9 single-member constituencies and 5 at-large constituencies, is the reason is twofold. One, it is to increase the size of the or to avoid reducing the size of the constituencies, so that in their cases, the constituencies, the electorate is divided into 9 or 10 as opposed to 15 or 13. So the boundaries get further apart, the number of constituents get larger in number. But it is also to mitigate the inevitable parochialism, parochial approach to politics, which is an inherent part of, of politics in a system where constituencies are so small. Persons who are elected on a national level by everyone bear no particular allegiance to a small constituency and are therefore much more likely to be able to approach national issues with a broader perspective, one which is unaffected by parochial considerations. And so a significant number of my team, while every single member of the team is committed to what I've called equality of franchise, that is that each voter should have the same weight in the ballot box. A significant number of my team are worried about dividing Cayman into such small constituencies. This proposal would, we believe, carry through on our determination that the present system, which we regard as unjust, is fixed so that the voter in East End and Northside has the same weight with respect to the makeup of the government as does the voter in Georgetown and West Bay. But would avoid, as I say, making these constituencies so small that what we wind up with is the possibility of very bizarre results and a really parochial approach to the national politics, driven by considerations which relate to very small constituencies rather than to the broad national issues. Now, that's a long speech, but I hope I've explained why we are where we are.
Mr. McLaughlin, can I just ask you to clarify whether you'd be willing to say exactly how many and who of your team don't support single-member constituencies, one man, one vote, as laid out in the referendum? Because there is, I suppose, rumour, speculation that in actual fact the person leading this is you.
Well, I lead the party, but I don't know how one could be the majority of 13. Every member of my team supports single-member constituencies, and every one of us support the concept of equality of franchise.
The move of the motion.
Sorry, I didn't hear an answer. I said, would you be willing to say how many don't support the original position and that are asking for these at-large candidates? Would you be willing to say how many want these at-large candidates?
But Wendy, the problem with your question is that 4 members of my team were not elected on the basis of the Progressive Manifesto. You can't blur the lines that way. I was at pains to set out that I have a government of 13, which is made up of 9 progressive members and 4 who never ran on our manifesto.
However, there were 2 of those members were fully supportive of the OMO.
I can't speak to that. And I'm not going to speculate. And I'm
You're saying that it's the 4, it's
No, I'm not saying that, Wendy, at all. I've said what I've said.
I suppose because the move of the motion said that you tried to cut a deal with him, would you like to speak to that? Was he speaking the truth, or was that not the truth?
Tammy, I've thought about this for a long time. And all I want to say is that I am not going to get into all of that. Arden left the party. He did not leave the party over single-member constituencies. He left the party over the leadership of the party, plain and simple. And there is nothing to be gained except lots of talk at me trying to answer Arden's allegations about this, which are colored by his perception of events at the time. I don't think that serves him, me, or the government or the country any good, and I'm not going there.
And the strength of the team at this point in time?
the team is as strong as it ever was. There's an issue over one particular matter, which is the one that we dealt with, and obviously we have to work that through. But I have no indication that any of my members want to go join the UDP or the two independents in the southeast corner.
So at this point in time, sir, if I might ask you this question, what is the likelihood of the equality of franchise in voting for the next election at this point in time?
Well, what I can say is this. Unless we are able to reach some consensus within the House on electoral reform, it's not going to happen. Because I cannot drive through or attempt to drive through a particular position which does not have the support of the majority of my team. As I said, people become very single-minded about issues. But I and the government have a country to run. For the average person, right now, electoral reform is not their first thought in their mind. I know because I know my constituents and because I live among them. It is an important issue for the country overall about how it is governed. So I'm not trying to belittle that, but I am saying I have to be careful and the government has to be careful not to let one issue like this create such problems, such division, that I do wind up with what my detractors would love, a government that is so weak that we can't get anything done. I fully understand that the objective of those in the southeast corner and the opposition, it is their role to try to take the government down. And people ought not to misunderstand that. They would love to see Alden toppled as premier. They would love to see the government in shambles so that they can take over. That's how oppositions are. I've been in opposition a long time. So no one need dress this up for anything but what it really is, which is a full frontal assault on the government, because we've been so solid, we've been so good on just about every other issue, and here is something that they correctly have identified as a possible Achilles heel. So, I and my colleague to my right and some of us older soldiers in this army, just have to settle the team down and say, listen, the government took a beating last Friday. We made a mess of things. But that is one issue. We have a country to run and a mandate which extends for another 3 years and 3 months. Let's get on with running the country, doing the job we've been elected to do.
And settling the differences where they exist, if you don't mind.
That's perfect.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming. Hope that's been helpful.